There is a question that almost never gets asked out loud in Christian circles. Not because people are not thinking it, but because the moment you say it, you can feel the room change. Do Catholics go to heaven? Ask that in an evangelical church and watch what happens. Ask a traditional Catholic whether the Protestant Reformation produced Christians or just well-meaning heretics. Ask an Eastern Orthodox theologian what he thinks about the American evangelical tradition. Underneath the diplomacy, you will find something that has been there a very long time. The assumption that the people in the next room over might not actually have the key, and that is before we even leave the building. This series started with a question I could not shake. Not from a theology textbook, not from a seminary lecture. It came from sitting with something that did not fit inside the framework I inherited. The uncontacted tribes, the people on the other side of the world who have never heard the name Jesus. People who live in community, who care for one another, who practice gratitude, reverence, responsibility. People who look from the outside like they are oriented towards something real. Are they denied? Are their doors closed because of geography? Because of history? Because of when and where they were born? I could not make the answer yes, and keep a straight face. And once I admitted that, a much bigger question opened up. If other doors are accessible to people who have never heard the name, then what exactly are those doors? And more importantly, what is the key that opens them? In Neo-Eclectic Christianity, we are very clear about the key. This is not a framework that says all paths are equal. This is not a framework that says belief does not matter. This is not a framework that says Jesus is just one option among many. The key is the Christic principle. And the Christic principle has a specific shape. It is a two-directional current of forgiveness, forgiving others, and receiving forgiveness for yourself. Sustained by gratitude, which keeps the whole system oriented and alive. That current, that way of moving through the world, is what Jesus represents most completely. It is what he taught. It is what he demonstrated. It is what he died inside of, forgiving the people killing him while he was being killed. That is not metaphor. That is the key, under maximum pressure. So when we say Jesus is the key, we mean that specifically and seriously. And to be precise about what this series is actually arguing, we're not talking about one door with many paths leading to it. We are talking about many doors, different traditions, different languages, different practices, different thresholds. What we are saying is that the same key works in all of them. The key is the Christic principle. The doors are genuinely plural. And that is what this series is examining. Not the key. The key is settled. We are examining the doors, and there are more of them than the institutional church has historically been willing to acknowledge. Now I want to name something that is going to come up. Because the moment you suggest that a Buddhist monk, or a Sufi mystic, or an indigenous elder might be oriented towards something real, a certain kind of Christian gets uncomfortable very quickly. And the discomfort makes sense. It feels like relativism. It feels like you are giving something away. It feels like you are saying belief does not matter. But before you close the tab, ask yourself something. Does your tradition think Catholics are going to heaven? Does your tradition think Eastern Orthodox Christians are going to heaven? Does your denomination think the one down the street has it right? Because the argument about who gets through which door has been happening inside Christianity since the 1st century. Paul and Peter argued about it. The councils fought over it. The Reformation split the Western Church over it. Christians have been drawing lines around their own door and telling other Christians they are on the wrong side for 2,000 years. So the question is not new. The anxiety is not new. What is new is being willing to follow the question honestly past the edge of our own tradition's comfort zone. This series is called Many Doors. Across these episodes, we are going to look at different traditions: Protestant, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, and indigenous and proto-religious frameworks, and ask one specific question about each one. Not, is this tradition true? Not, does this tradition have the key? But, does this tradition produce orientation? Does it move people toward a door? Does it cultivate the conditions, forgiveness, gratitude, the turning away from self-enclosure, and towards something greater that the Christic principle represents? Some traditions will hold up well. Some will have parts that do and parts that do not. Some will surprise you, and some of the answers closest to home may be the hardest to hear. We start next time with Protestantism. I came from that world. I know what it gets profoundly right, and I know where it loses the thread. That episode will be personal. It will be honest, and it will not be a hit piece. Because the goal of this series is never to tear down. It is to look clearly, to bring each tradition into contact with the Christic principle, and watch what happens. One more thing before we close. What I just described is not universalism. Not everyone gets in. There are many doors. The key is specific. Not every tradition that points upward is pointing with the same clarity, or the same completeness, or even in the same direction. We are not collapsing all spiritual paths into one blur and calling it grace. We are doing something harder than that. We are looking carefully, tradition by tradition, teaching by teaching, asking what holds up and what does not, and being honest about the answer, even when it costs us something. That is what Neo-Eclectic Christianity does. It follows the red letters, wherever they go, even when the destination makes people uncomfortable. Especially then. So here's the question I want to leave you with. When another tradition opens its own door, through forgiveness, through gratitude, through genuine orientation towards something greater than the self, are you willing to extend to that door the same respect you would want shown to your own?